When I opened up the settlement handbook during the first meeting of our search committee in the autumn of 2019, I knew I had gotten more than I had bargained for. The Unitarian Universalist Association had put together a beautiful, sprawling description of what a ministerial search should look like, and the gravity of the task ahead of us started to take shape in my mind. This was going to be a lot. When the world came to a grinding, pandemic-induced halt a little over a year ago, just as we were about to get to the parts of the search process wherein we were tasked with discerning the will of the congregation, it appeared perhaps we were dealt a hand that was more than we could handle. How could we move forward, we asked ourselves and each other, in this new environment, seemingly cut off from each other and our community? Was it even prudent to move forward with the search? As it turned out, the principles of our faith were the most effective guide. We embarked upon a free and independent search for truth and meaning, building a covenant for our team that was based around extreme intentionality, considering each decision with full hearts, open ears, inquiring minds. This commitment to continual discernment helped us to navigate the process, change course when necessary, and establish waypoints along our journey. As our church governance structure changed, we considered and incorporated modifications to the UUA guidance for search and included Kirsten in our conversations, crafting thoughtful covenants to guide our collaboration. When we invited our pre-candidates to journey to Portsmouth, we again built covenants to maximize safety, respect, and dignity for all of us in the process. We didn't get everything right, but through our discernment, we learned so much about South Church, our history, our community, and we began to see glimmers of what our future could be. By fully engaging with this process and the principles of our faith, we have engaged in a form of meaning making that only extreme intentionality can bring when combined with committed and thoughtful collaboration. It feels like a holy task, a sort of divine midwifery, helping to bring new life to our beloved congregation.
Peter Block says, every time we gather becomes a model of the future we are trying to create. With our commitment to extreme intentionality, we seek to frame each of our committee meetings in a way that reflects who we are and who we can become as a congregation, as a practice of living the future we are trying to create. Finding the right minister for South Church requires that we understand a few basic questions about who we are, how we operate, and what changes are needed to make our future a reality. Which qualities do we think are the most important in a settled minister? What do we need and want in a minister, now and in the future? While the questions are basic, getting at the answers took some doing. The congregational survey and summary of cottage meetings, which combined involved over 300 South Church community members, gave us concrete data to help offer answers. For example, the majority want a minister who can be a spiritual leader first. We want a minister who prepares and leads inspiring and challenging worship services and celebrations, chooses sermon topics that focus on social justice issues, theological values, and spiritual growth, family life, relationships, and values. We also want a minister who creates a sense of belonging and builds community. Additionally, we grounded our work in the understanding that South Church is at the forefront of developing new ways of governing. Through focus group meetings, additional survey questions of associate program members, and conversations with Kirsten and Reverend Susan, we collected more data to inform our discernment process. We have learned a lot and are confident that with the foundation of information we have built, we are well equipped with the knowledge we need to find our next minister. As is said in yogic philosophy, what you seek is also seeking you.
We learned that our congregation has fared much better than most through this pandemic. We've thrived, raising funds to repair our roof, meeting our budget goals, and working on new church systems at the same time. This was not lost on our candidates. We learned that we live in a very attractive community for most ministers, but that they are also a bit daunted by the high cost of housing in our area. We learned that we're very attractive as a congregation. Candidates marveled at the strength of our associate programs, and more than one shared that they had planned to apply to South Church whenever we went into search. Another senior minister called us one of the UUA's flagship congregations. We learned that our UUA faith has a very bright future. 12 of our 22 candidates were brand new ministers. While not ready for a congregation of our size, there were many bright lights among them that we hope will cross our paths in the future. And from our candidates, one minister told us when we mentioned that we hope to continue with one service rather than two, that wanting to be all together was a sure sign of a congregation that didn't want to grow numerically, which this minister found troubling when our UUA message of inclusion is so needed in today's world. While talking about the importance of music, another minister told us of a UU colleague who led his congregation in singing Home, Home on the Range, because he believes so strongly in the importance of having members of a congregation raise their voices together, preferably without a hymnal, and singing out with joy. One candidate converted to Judaism while remaining a highly respected UU minister. They shared that our UU faith is truly big enough to allow any of us to embrace such a commitment. I love that. From discussions about our collaborative governance, we gained a deeper understanding of the philosophical and theological foundations for moving away from a CEO model, and how this fits with the anti-oppression work that our faith is engaged in. All good lessons taken to heart.
And yet, how can it be that only one candidate could be recommended wholeheartedly by the search committee? The experience begs two questions. First, is there something wrong with our congregation? Consider this. Our 22 applicants, about 40% of the searching ministers, were the most for any congregation. 2 of our final 3 are UUA superstars. We consistently heard from candidates how appealing we are and how impressive our strengths and achievements are. Some in our congregation speculate that we have a reputation as a difficult congregation. If that perception is out there, our experience in the search is that the positive image clearly tips the balance in our favor. One caveat. Our history of difficult ministerial transitions is long and varied and is part of how we are perceived. That history calls for a future congregational conversation. 2, did we miss the mark as a search committee? We deliberated deeply at each decision point along the way. We came to consensus each time. We have no reservations about the ultimate decision to select only one. In our post-decision interview with our preferred candidate, we heard how some of our actions gave him pause along the way. Because of our move toward collaborative governance, we included Kirsten in the pre-candidating weekend process, and with his permission, shared his ministerial record with her. UUA guidelines exclude other church members from contact with candidates. We were the only church to conduct in-person weekends in the midst of the pandemic. Our explanations of the collaborative governance model shifted over time. We handled the salary discussion less effectively than his other two preferred churches. He assured us that none of these things alone were deal breakers. All four of these considerations help us assess how we can improve our message and our process next year. Yes, next year. Very few ministers and few churches entered the second round. We had just one applicant, a not yet fellowshipped candidate. Our first choice has accepted a call to a congregation twice our size at a substantially higher salary with an impressive track record of social justice action. We wish him well. And now, Stephen, you have some particular thoughts to add.
Thank you, Jim. It is my belief that ministers do not choose their vocation because they think they will get rich. I do believe ministers expect to be paid fairly and equitably, which is what anyone should expect. The UUA issues guidelines for churches and ministers. These guidelines are based on church size and geographic location. South Church is classified as a GO3, and we are a mid to large-sized church. The UUA only uses wage data when they consider which GO number should be assigned to each congregation. Under this rating, the midpoint salary for a settled minister for South Church is $101,700. During pre-candidating weekends, salary, benefits, and housing were discussed. As candidates had this information in advance, there was little discussion on these points. If our top candidate had chosen South Church as their first choice, we would have entered into negotiations with that candidate to finalize a contract. We may never know the real reason why we were not the first choice of our top candidate. However, in a follow-up discussion, salary was one of the points on their list. Therefore, I am suggesting that in our 2022 budget, we increase the range for the minister's salary to a GO4 level. This would be an increase to $107,800 and would add $7,000 to the total ministerial package. Thank you.
Thanks for that important information, Stephen. South Church is a very special congregation. We don't gather because we've figured out life's questions or think that we've got it right. We gather to learn about being human. And sometimes it's not easy. Maybe that's why this chapter in our ministerial search is so hard. We are faced with looking back at the important information we learned from the cottage meetings, the surveys, the small focus groups, and the candidates. We'll examine the feedback that we've been given, and maybe, just maybe, we'll realize that everything has worked out just the way it is supposed to. We, as a congregation, are entering a time we are all given the opportunity to slow down, to learn about our gifts, to dive into our character, and restructure our beloved community while slowly and consciously coming back together in person. Our interim period has been unique. Upheaval, a rocky start, and a global pandemic. As a congregation, we have not been able to sit in the same room to discuss many of the challenges holding us back so that we may move forward. Our congregation is at the forefront of church governance. We're striving to be more democratic, anti-oppressive, and less patriarchal. And it's not for everybody. We're working out our administrative structures to be more collaborative, more clear, more transparent, and yet still accountable. We envision a sturdier church, one that may provide a model for other UU churches across the country. And we'll need a very special minister to do that. Not only willing, but eager to work on these issues with us. A person able to navigate creative chaos. We are lucky to have Reverend Susan Sahusky Brown with us during this time. As an accomplished and experienced minister, she will guide us and allow us to make a decision in the best interest of our beloved congregation. How we got here, where we are going, with your unwavering support, is truly for the best. The actress Marilyn Monroe defines this search process spot on for South Church. I'm selfish, impatient, a little insecure. I make mistakes. I'm out of control, and at times hard to handle. But if you can't handle me at my worst, then you sure as hell don't deserve me at my best.
We stand here together at the precipice that divides who we have always been and who we are about to become. We wonder, what does it mean to be the people of South Church? This beacon of light for liberal religion on the seacoast and perhaps the wider world. What does fate hold for us in the years ahead? And who will join to help guide us on our journey? There is no fret or fear in this wondering, for we know that our love and our faith will guide us through this long night of discernment. May it be so.